Saren Hale first noticed Elias Rowan on a rainy afternoon when the sky looked as broken as she felt. The bus stop was crowded, umbrellas clashing, people sighing impatiently as the rain soaked the streets. He stood apart from the others, holding no umbrella, letting the rain fall freely on his hair and coat as if he welcomed the cold. There was something painfully beautiful about the way he looked up at the sky, as though he were daring it to hurt him more. She didn't know why her heart reacted the way it did. She only knew that in that moment, something shifted inside her, something quiet, something irreversible. They met properly 2 days later at the small neighborhood bookstore Saren visited whenever life became too loud. Elias was seated on the floor between tall shelves, surrounded by old novels and loose pages filled with handwriting. He looked up when she accidentally knocked over a stack of books, and their eyes met for the first time. The air between them changed instantly, thick with curiosity and unspoken recognition. In the second paragraph of Part 1, before the story goes any further, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, because stories like this are written for hearts that still believe in love, even when it hurts. Elias smiled first, a soft, hesitant smile, as though he was afraid it might disappear if he held it too long. Saren apologized, flustered, and he helped her gather the books. Their fingers brushed, and the touch lingered longer than it should have. Neither of them pulled away quickly. Neither of them wanted to. That was how it began. Not with grand declarations, not with promises, but with silence that felt safe. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into stolen afternoons. They walked the long way home together, talked about books, dreams, and the kind of futures they pretended were possible. Elias spoke of wanting to write stories that would outlive him. Saren confessed she wanted a life that felt gentle, not rushed, not cruel. Together, they created a small world where pain didn't exist yet. But pain always arrives early for people who love deeply. Saren's family never approved of Elias. Her father, Thomas Hale, believed love was useless without status and security. Elias was brilliant, yes, but unstable, working odd jobs, chasing dreams that didn't pay bills. To Thomas, Elias represented risk, and risk was unacceptable. Love doesn't feed a household, her father said coldly one evening. You will end this. Saren refused. Quietly, stubbornly, she refused. Elias, on the other hand, carried wounds Saren didn't fully understand yet. His mother, Lydia, was ill, seriously ill, and the cost of keeping her alive weighed heavily on him. He hid the letters, the bills, the exhaustion behind soft smiles and jokes. He didn't want Saren to see him breaking, so he loved her harder instead. They planned futures in whispers. A small house, a quiet life, a shared last name. Every dream felt real when they said it together. Every kiss felt like a promise neither of them realized they might not be able to keep. Then came the night everything cracked. Elias collapsed at work, his body finally surrendering to weeks of stress and sleepless nights. The diagnosis came quickly and mercilessly, an aggressive heart condition he had ignored for too long. Surgery was possible, but expensive. Time was short. He didn't tell Saren immediately. When she found out, it wasn't from him. It was from Noah, his best friend, who couldn't bear watching her laugh while the truth waited in silence. Saren rushed to the hospital, breathless, terrified, angry, and broken all at once. Elias looked small in the hospital bed. Vulnerable. Mortal. I didn't want you to stay out of pity, he said softly. Saren cried then, not quietly, not politely, but with the kind of tears that come from loving someone too much. She held his hand and told him she wasn't going anywhere. She told him love wasn't optional. She told him they would survive. But the world had already decided otherwise. Outside the hospital walls, Saren's father was making arrangements of his own. He saw Elias's illness as the perfect ending, clean, inevitable, final. Pressure mounted. Ultimatums were given. Choices were forced. Saren stood between love and family, hope and fear, heart and duty. And somewhere deep inside, she felt it, the quiet, terrifying certainty that love alone might not be enough. Saren didn't sleep the night after she found out. She sat on the edge of her bed with her phone in her hand, reading the same medical words again and again until they stopped looking real. Aggressive. High risk. Urgent. The terms felt like knives dressed up as sentences. Each time she blinked, she saw Elias's face in that hospital bed, paler than she'd ever known him, his lips still trying to smile for her. At dawn, she made a decision that felt simple in her chest but terrifying in the real world. She was going to save him. Not with prayers alone. Not with hope alone. with action. She went to the hospital before her father woke up, carrying a bag with fruits, water, and the small notebook Elias always wrote in. When she entered the room, he looked at her like she was sunlight. That look almost broke her. Because how could she be sunlight to him when the world was already dimming? Elias reached for her hand. His fingers were colder than usual. "You're here early," he whispered. "I'm always going to be early now," Saren said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Early for you. Early for us." He watched her closely, like he knew she was hiding fear behind bravery. Then he turned his gaze toward the window and sighed. "They said surgery," he murmured. "But it costs more than I've ever held in my hands." Saren leaned closer. "Then we'll find it." Elias gave a quiet laugh that held no humor. "Saren, I can't even pay the bills for my mother. I'm drowning." "That's why you have me," she insisted. "You're not drowning alone." For a moment there was silence, heavy, tender. Then he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles like it was a vow. But outside that room, the war had already started. The father who didn't believe in love. Thomas Hale found out Saren had been visiting Elias daily. He didn't have to ask. His driver had already told him. The morning she returned home to change clothes, she found her father waiting in the living room with the calm fury of a man who was used to obedience. "You're ignoring your responsibilities," he said, voice even. "My responsibility is my life," Saren replied, her chest tightening. "You're confusing emotion with destiny," he snapped. "That boy is a dead end, Saren. A sick, penniless dreamer." Saren's face hardened. "He's not a dead end. He's a human being." Thomas rose from his seat slowly. "And you are my daughter. You will not attach your name to shame." The word shame hit her like a slap. Saren didn't shout. She didn't scream. She only said very quietly, "If loving him is shame, then I don't want your pride." Her father stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language. Then he delivered the final blow. "I've arranged a dinner," he said, "with the Cross family." Saren froze. "The Cross family?" Thomas nodded. "Julian Cross is a respectable man. His mother owns half the city. He wants a wife. You will attend." Saren's stomach twisted. "I'm not available." Thomas's expression sharpened. "You will be. Or I will cut you off from everything you think you need to play hero." Saren's voice trembled. "You're threatening me?" "I'm saving you," Thomas said. She walked away from him with tears burning in her eyes, not because she was weak, but because she finally understood the truth. Her father didn't see her as a person. He saw her as a plan. A desperate plan. Saren met Noah outside the hospital later that afternoon. Noah looked exhausted, his hair uncombed, his eyes red from worry. "I didn't know who else to tell," Noah admitted. I couldn't watch you smiling while he was dying quietly." Saren hugged him, then pulled back. "How much do they need for the surgery?" Noah exhaled. "A lot. And it has to happen fast." Saren's mind raced. Fundraisers. Loans. Selling her jewelry. Borrowing from friends. She thought of every option and realized none of them were fast enough. Then she thought of something else. Something dangerous. Something that would change everything. That night, Saren opened her mother's old jewelry box, the one her father kept locked away like a treasure chest. Her mother had died years ago, leaving behind pieces of gold and gemstones that were supposed to be passed down. Saren had never cared about them before, but now, in the dim light of her room, they looked like lifelines. Her hands shook as she lifted a necklace with a large emerald. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the memory of her mother, "but I need him alive." The next morning, she took the jewelry to a discreet buyer across town. The man's eyes widened at the quality. He offered her cash, too little for the value, but enough to change her fate. Saren accepted without negotiating. When the money was in her hands, she didn't feel victorious. She felt like she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. Elias learns the truth. Saren returned to the hospital with the cash hidden inside her bag. She waited until the doctor left the room, then sat beside Elias and placed the money envelope on his lap. "We have it," she said softly. Elias stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. "What is this?" "The surgery money," she answered. "Not all of it, but enough to put the process in motion." Elias's brow furrowed. "How?" Saren swallowed. "Don't ask me that." But Elias was not the kind of man who could ignore sacrifice. He opened the envelope. His hands trembled as he flipped through the bills. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and something sharp entered his gaze. "No," he whispered. Saren tried to smile. "Yes." His voice broke. "Saren, Where did you get this? She avoided his eyes. It doesn't matter. It matters. Elias snapped, then coughed, grabbing his chest. Saren leaned forward in panic, but he raised a hand, breathing hard. When the pain eased, he continued, softer now, devastated. You sold something, he said. Saren's throat tightened. Elias, you sold something precious, he insisted. For me. She couldn't deny it. Tears spilled. I did what I had to do, she whispered. Because I can't, her voice cracked. I can't lose you. Elias stared at her as if she'd just handed him her soul. Slowly, he pushed the envelope back toward her. I can't accept this. Saren's eyes flashed with desperation. Don't you dare reject my love. He swallowed, lips trembling. It's not your love I'm rejecting. It's the price you're paying. Saren leaned close, her forehead touching his. Then live. Live and make the price worth it. Elias closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. Okay, he whispered. Okay, Saren. I'll fight. The engagement trap. 2 days later, Saren's father sprang his trap. The dinner with the Cross family wasn't just a dinner. It was an announcement. Saren walked into the elegant restaurant and found the room decorated with flowers and candles like a celebration. Julian Cross stood beside his mother, Lydia Cross, both dressed like royalty. Julian looked handsome in a polished, cold way, like a man who had never been told no. When Saren realized what was happening, her stomach dropped. Thomas lifted his glass. Tonight, he said proudly, we celebrate the future engagement of my daughter, Saren Hale, to Julian Cross. The room clapped. Saren didn't move. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed by invisible hands. Julian stepped forward, smiling. Saren, he said smoothly, I've admired you for a long time. I promise you comfort, stability, and honor. Saren stared at him. And what if I don't want it? A hush fell. Thomas's voice became dangerously low. Don't embarrass me. Saren's hands clenched at her sides. She thought of Elias, pale and fragile, still trying to smile for her. She thought of the money she'd sacrificed. She thought of love that had never asked her to perform for anyone. Then she said the words that shattered the room. I'm in love with someone else. Gasps. Thomas's face went rigid. Julian's smile faded into something darker. Someone else, Julian repeated. Who? Saren's voice was steady. His name is Elias Rowan. Julian's eyes narrowed. The sick boy. Saren flinched. Thomas slammed his glass down. Enough. But Saren was done being controlled. I won't marry Julian, she said. Not now. Not ever. Thomas stood, towering over her. Then you will watch Elias die, and you will carry that guilt forever. Saren's breath caught. Because in that moment, she realized her father was capable of anything. A warning from Julian. As Saren stormed out of the restaurant, Julian followed her into the parking lot. You're making a mistake, he said, voice quiet but sharp. Saren spun. Leave me alone. Julian stepped closer. My mother doesn't like rejection. Saren stared. I don't care. Julian's smile returned, cruel this time. You should. People who get in the way of my family's plans tend to regret it. A chill ran down her spine. Saren's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Noah calling. She answered immediately. Noah. His voice was panicked. Saren, something happened. Elias collapsed again. They're rushing him into surgery sooner than planned. Saren's blood went cold. I'm coming, she whispered. She hung up and ran to her car, ignoring Julian's voice behind her. Saren, he shouted. You can't outrun this. But she wasn't trying to outrun. She was trying to reach Elias before fate did. A promise before the knife. At the hospital, everything moved fast, doctors, nurses, papers, signatures. Saren pushed through corridors until she found Elias being wheeled toward the operating room. His eyes were half open, unfocused, but when he saw her, he tried to smile. You came, he murmured. Saren grabbed his hand, walking beside the stretcher. I'll always come. His grip tightened weakly. If I don't make it. Don't, she whispered fiercely. Don't say that. Elias's gaze softened. Listen to me. If I don't make it, don't let them break you. Saren's tears fell onto his hand. You're not leaving me. He swallowed, struggling to breathe. Saren, I love you. She leaned close, her lips near his ear. Then live, she whispered. Live and come back to me. I'm begging you. Elias's eyes shimmered. Okay. The doors to the operating room opened. The nurses began to separate Saren from the stretcher. Saren clung to his hand until the very last second, until they forced her fingers away. And as the doors closed, she stood there shaking, staring at the metal barrier like it was a prison. Because on the other side was the man who held her entire heart. And she didn't know if she would ever see him again. The hospital clock ticked louder than it should have. Every second sounded like a warning Saren couldn't escape. She sat in the waiting room with her hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached, her eyes fixed on the red surgery in progress light above the operating room doors. People walked past her, nurses, families, strangers, but none of them existed in her world anymore. There was only Elias. Only the thin line between life and loss. Hours passed. No one spoke to her. Her phone buzzed endlessly, missed calls from her father, unread messages from Julian, but she ignored them all. Whatever storms waited outside these walls didn't matter if Elias didn't come back. Finally, the doors opened. A doctor stepped out, his expression unreadable. Saren stood so fast her chair toppled behind her. "How is he?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Please, just tell me how he is." The doctor hesitated, and that hesitation crushed her chest. "The surgery was complicated," he said carefully. "We were able to stabilize his heart, but there were unforeseen complications. He lost a lot of blood." Saren's knees weakened. "Is he alive?" "Yes," the doctor said. "For now." Those two words, "for now," echoed like a curse. "He's in intensive care," the doctor continued. "The next 24 hours are critical." Saren nodded, barely hearing him. Alive was enough. Alive meant hope. They allowed her to see Elias briefly. He lay surrounded by machines, tubes running from his body like fragile lifelines. His chest rose and fell slowly, unevenly. Saren sat beside him and took his hand, careful not to disturb anything. "You fought," she whispered. "I knew you would." His fingers twitched faintly, as if he heard her. She stayed there all night. The cost of survival. Morning came quietly, without mercy. Elias survived the night, but the doctor's face remained tense. "His heart is extremely weak," the doctor explained. "Even if he recovers, he will need lifelong care. Medication. Monitoring. No stress. No strain." Saren nodded through tears. "That's fine. I'll take care of him." The doctor studied her gently. "There's more." Her breath caught. "The hospital bills, ongoing treatment, rehabilitation. It will be overwhelming." Saren didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it." But the world didn't bend for love the way she hoped it would. That afternoon, Thomas Hale arrived at the hospital. He didn't come alone. Julian Cross walked beside him, his expression calm, almost smug. The sight of them made Saren's stomach churn. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, stepping protectively closer to Elias's bed. Thomas ignored Elias entirely. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Saren snapped. Julian spoke instead, his voice smooth. "You've been very stubborn, Saren." Saren's eyes flashed. "Leave." Thomas sighed, as though exhausted by her existence. "I've paid the remaining hospital bills." Saren froze. "What?" "I covered the costs," he said. "All of them." Her heart pounded, not with relief, but with dread. "Why?" Thomas met her gaze coldly. "Because this ends now." Julian stepped closer. "You'll marry me," he said softly. "And in exchange, Elias gets the care he needs." Saren stared at them, horror blooming in her chest. "You're bargaining with his life." Julian smiled faintly. "I'm offering mercy." Saren shook her head violently. "No, I won't." Thomas's voice hardened. "If you refuse, I withdraw all support. Every payment. Every connection. He will be discharged with no resources." Saren turned to Elias, unconscious, vulnerable, completely unaware that his survival had become a transaction. Her voice trembled. "You can't do this." Thomas leaned in. "I already have." A decision made in silence. Saren didn't answer them immediately. She sat beside Elias long after they left, holding his hand, crying silently so no one would hear. She imagined a future where she refused, where Elias struggled, suffered, maybe died anyway. And she imagined another future, one where she gave up herself so he could live. Love, she realized, wasn't always about staying. Sometimes it was about leaving. When Elias finally woke that evening, his eyes fluttered open weakly. "Saren," he whispered. She smiled through tears. "I'm here." He studied her face, sensing something wrong. "You're scared." She shook her head. "I'm strong." He frowned. "You're lying." She laughed softly, brushing his hair back. "I've always been bad at hiding things from you." He swallowed. "Did the surgery work?" She nodded. "Yes. You're going to live." Relief washed over his face. Then everything's okay. Saren closed her eyes briefly. No, she thought. Everything is ending. The goodbye Elias never understood. The next morning, Saren arrived early, dressed differently, calm, composed, distant. Elias noticed immediately. You look like you're going somewhere, he said weakly. She nodded. I am. Where? He asked. She hesitated. Home. He smiled. Good. I hate that hospital stole you from me. Saren leaned down and kissed his forehead. She held the kiss longer than necessary, memorizing him. I love you, Elias said suddenly. Her chest cracked open. I know, she whispered. No, he insisted. Say it back. Her lips trembled. Elias. Say it, he pleaded. She met his eyes, letting him see everything she couldn't say. I love you, she said softly. He smiled, content. Then don't disappear on me. Saren forced a smile. I won't. But it was the last lie she would ever tell him. She left the room before her resolve could break. The wedding without love. The ceremony was quiet, private, efficient. Saren stood beside Julian Cross in a white dress that felt like a funeral shroud. Her father watched with satisfaction. The vows sounded distant, meaningless. When the officiant asked if she accepted Julian as her husband, Saren answered softly, I do. Not because she wanted to, but because someone else needed to live. That night, she didn't cry. She felt empty instead. Elias discovers the truth. Weeks passed. Elias grew stronger. He asked for Saren every day. She's busy, the nurses said. Family matters, Noah added unconvincingly. When Elias was finally discharged, Noah couldn't hold the secret anymore. He sat across from Elias in the small apartment and stared at the floor. She didn't leave you, Noah said quietly. She saved you. Elias frowned. What do you mean? Noah swallowed hard. She married Julian Cross. The room spun. What? Elias whispered. She made a deal, Noah continued. Your medical bills. Your care. Everything. She traded herself. Elias's chest burned. His heart monitor beeped wildly as the truth crashed into him. No, he gasped. She wouldn't. She did, Noah said through tears. Because she loves you. Elias screamed then, not loudly, but with a broken sound that came from somewhere deep inside him. He grabbed his chest, collapsing to the floor. Love, once again, was attacking his heart. The last meeting. Against medical advice, Elias left the apartment that night. He found Saren at the Cross Estate garden, standing alone under the moonlight, her wedding ring glinting like a chain. Saren, he called. She turned and froze. Elias. Her voice shattered. You shouldn't be here. He stepped closer, eyes burning. You sold your life for mine. Tears spilled down her face. I didn't sell it. I gave it. He shook his head desperately. I never asked you to. I know, she sobbed. That's why I did it. They stood inches apart, aching, forbidden. I would rather die, Elias said, his voice breaking, than live without you. Saren grabbed his face. Don't you dare say that. Your life matters. So does yours. She smiled sadly. Mine already ended. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like he could stitch time back together. I'll wait for you, he whispered. However long it takes. She pulled away gently. No. You'll live. You'll love again. I can't, he said. You must, she insisted. Her phone buzzed. Julian's name flashed on the screen. This is goodbye, Saren said. Elias grabbed her hand. Come with me. She shook her head. If I do, you lose everything. Tears streamed down his face. Then let me lose it. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft, aching final. Then she stepped back. Goodbye, Elias, she whispered. She turned and walked away without looking back. The heart that couldn't survive love. 2 days later, Elias collapsed in his sleep. The doctors said his heart simply stopped. They called it natural causes. Saren knew better. At his funeral, she stood at a distance, dressed in black, unnoticed. Julian didn't know. Her father didn't care. She watched them lower the coffin and felt her soul descend with it. That night, Saren removed her wedding ring and placed it beside Elias's photo. 2 hearts. 1 tragic ending. And in the last paragraph, just as promised, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, because stories like this are written for those who have loved deeply, lost painfully, and still believe that some love never truly dies. Broken Heart.